Hi everyone, welcome to The Blind Side. To kick off 2023 with our first video, there's no better place to start than the RFU's dismissal of Eddie Jones. Delving into the stats in his tenure as head coach, the reasons the RFU had to relieve him of his duties, and how Steve Borthwick's arrival will impact the England team with a World Cup in just 9 months' time. As Bill Sweeney said in Steve Borthwick's first press conference, it's important to thank and recognise everything Eddie Jones has done for England rugby. In his tenure as head coach, he led us to a Rugby World Cup final, 3 Six Nations titles including 1 Grand Slam, and a record-breaking 18 consecutive wins. We wish him the best of luck returning to Australia. Perhaps not too much though. Much like this Aussie, a number of fans lost faith in Eddie Jones. Booing and huffing had become common at Twickenham as the crowd felt disinterested in England's style of play. Much to the dismay of Will Evans, atmosphere at HQ was muted. Even his Quins teammate, the poster boy of attacking jump-out-of-your-seat rugby, couldn't get the crowd going. With unhappy fans, results not going our way, and no clear direction, confidence in Eddie was wavering, despite his World Cup record. His fiery attitude towards the press and interviewers can't have helped his cause, nor his criticism of how many players were developed through public schools. It's not like they invented the game. Despite all these other factors, I'm going to suggest that the 90 seconds of rugby leading to Curtly Aronsa's try truly explain the downfall of Jones, and ultimately his dismissal. I'll take you back to Twickenham. Owen Farrell has just kicked off after Damien Willemse's dropped goal. It's a good catch, but Curry and May make a good chase, and South Africa are forced to box kick. This is where England make their first mistake. In order to combat South Africa's brilliant line-out and huge scrum, England decided to start 3 locks, with Maro Itoje and Johnny Hill at 4 and 5, and Alex Coles at 6. Our locks are absolute menaces to scrum halves. As you can see here, their huge frames allow them to easily target the 9 to try and block or deflect their box kicks. Courtney Lawes missed the South Africa game due to injury. However, his efforts here versus the All Blacks almost led to Sam Underhill's incredible try. And yet here versus South Africa, whilst Faf de Klerk goes to box kick, Tom Curry is the man chasing it down, even though we have all 3 locks within about 10 metres of the ruck. In Test match rugby, you can treat a restart almost like a set piece, knowing the other team are going to kick the ball back to you about 90% of the time, Fiji and the Barbars aside. As a result, you can plan accordingly, meaning players can be placed in positions and roles best suited to their skill set. You can then vary this depending who you're playing against, as teams have differing exit strategies. For example, Argentina play one phase, then pass it back to their fly half, who tries to find grass with a kick, giving time for his players to get out of their 22 and make a tackle. England recognised and attempted to counter this by leaving big ball carriers Billy Vunipola and Joe Cokanasiga in the backfield, alongside the ever-present Freddie Stewart. It didn't go quite to plan, but it was clear to see the thought process. When we played Japan, their strategy of mauling off restart was so effective at retaining possession that New Zealand followed suit the week after, making sure that every deep kick was met with a catcher and 2 lifters. They would also act as blockers, meaning it's harder for chasers to make a dominant hit on 3 bodies rather than a single receiver. The similarities in tactics didn't end there, with both teams attempting crossfield kicks in order to take advantage of our narrow defensive line, and the rest of the players waiting deeper in the backfield for a longer kick. New Zealand's try was based on Japan's move the week before. Ian Foster had probably hoped for a forward to be on the edge instead of Manu Tuilagi, but Rieko Ioane was unfazed, beating him and the covering defenders for pace and touching down for a brilliant score. In the autumn's final test versus South Africa, it was again clear that they had analysed our restarts from the previous weeks. South Africa's reputation is to kick for territory and then grind you down with their set piece and incredible defence. But after seeing what the All Blacks had done the week before, they developed an appetite for attacking rugby. After shaping to kick, Faf de Klerk realises there's a 4 versus 3 mismatch out wide, with the Itoje and Coles lined up against Leroux and Willemse. 2 quick passes later, and Willemse drags Itoje to the edge, releasing a wonderful offload to Aronsa, who has 5 postcodes worth of space to run into. Thankfully, Stewart manages to get a hand on the grubber. If not, Aronsa could have had 2 in 2 minutes. Returning to his actual try that we were analysing, oh whoops, not that one. Over the autumn, Freddie Stewart took catch after catch, cementing the 15 jersey as his own, His bomb defusal manual was tested in the build-up by Faf de Klerk, but again, it passed with flying colours. It's just a shame he won't lend it to any of his back three compatriots. Regardless of which combination Eddie went with, England's back three have struggled under the high ball recently, and apart from Stewart, no one has covered themselves in glory. Even the new players coming in aren't watertight in this area, so it will be interesting to see how Borthwick looks to control the kicking game, something his Leicester side were masters of. For those expecting a change in style to attacking, offloading rugby, I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad news, but that's not been Borthwick's approach thus far. Last season, his Leicester side kicked the ball more than any other team, making a whopping 923 kicks in play. This was way ahead of second-place Saracens, a team that have at times been referred to as boring or pragmatic. Whether this is harsh or not, you can decide for yourselves, but there were a number of England fans who took issue with the influence Sarri's had on Eddie's system. Looking into the current England squad, and the changes make sense. Out of back three regulars, Stewart is second on the list for most kicks, Hassel-Collins is fifth and has made more than any other wing, and Max Malins and Tommy Freeman also are within the top 10. Comparing this with the outgoing May, Knoll and Cokanasiga, who have combined for fewer kicks than the Sale Sharks pack, selection becomes even clearer. Joe Cokanasiga in particular hasn't registered a Premiership kick in the last 2 seasons. There is of course one anomaly, in the form of Quins flyer Caden Murley, who has only made 4 kicks this season, and with 3 of them classified as errors, kicking is not his forte. But I believe Borthwick has a special role for him, akin to how Johnny May was utilised under his predecessor. Eddie once compared May to a dog in the park, chasing down balls at 100 miles per hour. Murley does a similar job at club level, leading the kick chase and pressurising opponents. Add in his finishing ability, and England really could have found a replacement to the long-serving Johnny May. You just need to try and avoid situations where they are alone in the backfield, especially when it comes to fielding grubbers or chip kicks. Under Borthwick, England will look to rotate the backfield, with the plethora of fantastic kickers at their disposal. Outside of back three options, Smith and Farrell can drop in as well. Here's an example from Saracens versus Exeter, with Farrell in the backfield, who after receiving a pass from Good, nails a 50-22 into the corner. There are a number of combinations Borthwick can go with across the back three. However, with the return of fit again Anthony Watson, it seems that Murley will be pushed out of the squad altogether. But if Watson can regain the form of the 5-time test-capped British and Irish Lion, then Borthwick and England fans will be laughing. That's enough about the kicking game for the moment. Let's focus instead on the attack. England's attack under Eddie Jones operated in a 1-3-2-2 system. These numbers dictate how your forwards are spread out across the pitch whilst you're in possession of the ball. But in this example versus South Africa, England set up in a 1-3-3-1. You can see there is 1 forward in the ruck, Maro Itoje, 3 forwards in a pod off 9, Jamie George, Kyle Sinclair and Johnny Hill, and then 3 forwards outside 10 in the form of Ellis Genge, Billy Vunipola and Alex Coles. And then you have the single wide forward, Tom Curry, who's just returning into position from the attempted charge down. Over the course of a game, teams use differing styles, as it's not always possible to get into your preferred formation. There can be many reasons for this. Some are easily explained, like here with Tom Curry coming back late from a charge down, or if a prop is slower to get into position after a scrum or lifting at the line-out. But some are more complex and can be attributed to the decision-making of the playmakers. England predominantly played with 3 playmakers under Eddie. Youngs at 9, Ford or now Smith at 10, and Farrell at 12. The 1-3-2-2 gave each of them at least 2 forwards to marshal, allowing for an unpredictable attack with numerous options and patterns to run. Yet in the autumn, England's attack faltered, struggling to put together anything substantial, at least while the other team had 15 players on the field. Ultimately, Jones paid the price for this, but the players also received unwanted attention from fans and pundits alike. In particular, those questioning whether a Smith and Farrell axis could actually work. I'm a massive fan of Henry Slade, and his playmaking ability as a 13 is in stark contrast to the barrelling Manu Tuilagi. However, curtailing Slade as a second playmaker restricts him from running the world-class lines we've been accustomed to seeing. With his latest injury, not playing a 10-12 axis will put a lot of pressure on Smith and or Farrell to be the main creative threat, taking nothing away from Stewart, Lawrence, and Tuilagi, but their skill sets lay elsewhere. With Borthwick starting Marchant at 13, it adds another ball player to the backline. I just worry we're a little bit lightweight at centre. Marchant's best performances this season have come on the wing, and whenever he does play centre at club level, he's alongside one of the world's most combative 12s, Andre Oosterhuizen. As aggressive as Farrell can be, he cannot offer the same kind of go forward that Marchant gets at club level. It will be interesting to see how England line up at set pieces. Obviously at lineouts they'll put Dombrandt into the backs to carry, but off scrums it will be more challenging. Nick Evans' Quins were absolutely brilliant attacking off scrums, scoring 12 tries in the Prem this season, the most of any team off that platform. But with no clear ball-carrying option to hold the defence, I think teams will be able to drift quite easily as we play in front of them. Scotland this weekend have a brilliant partnership of Sione Tuipulotu and Hugh Jones, and with one of the best defensive centres in the world on the bench in the form of Chris Harris, we may struggle to break them down. With the lack of ball carriers in the backs, our pack are really going to have to step up after a lacklustre autumn. Looking at the pack's stats over the 4 matches doesn't make for brilliant reading. In this period of play when England have possession, Sinclair attempts to carry into a South African wall. This is without doubt the hardest carry to make in all of rugby. There is no momentum as you're returning from a kick, and because it's a wide ruck, the defence only have to worry about the open side of the pitch, meaning their line speed is fast and line integrity is intact. As a result, the dominance of the carry isn't that concerning for a coach. It's the speed of the clear-out that comes first. If the ball takes a while to come back, it allows the defence to get set again and create a similar picture to the previous ruck. The attacking team can only play one way, so the defence can again focus on line speed and integrity. Unfortunately, the clear-out is poor, and JVP waits what feels like an eternity for the ball to come back. The only saving grace of the situation is the playmaking abilities of Smith and Farrell, who managed to engineer a decent opportunity out of nothing. However, as we've mentioned, Manu doesn't have the passing abilities of a Slade or a Marchant, and what could have been a nice break on the edge for Freeman turned into a carry through traffic for Manu Tuilagi. Then Billy attempts to waltz through the South African defence, receiving the ball deep, almost at a standstill, and barely even accelerating into contact. Number 8 is without doubt a unique and challenging position. Having both the mobility of a flanker and the weight of a prop is never going to be an easy task. Add in all the handling skills and ability to control the ball with your feet at the back of a scrum, the skill set required to be an international 8 is endless. Despite the abundance of formats they can be judged across, getting your team on the front foot is the bread and butter of a good 8. For England, that was no different. Eddie was reliant upon the strength of Sam Simmonds and Billy Vunipola's carrying game to propel England's attacking platform. Unfortunately, during the autumn series, this failed to materialise. Whilst their carrying stats appear reasonable at first glance, once you delve into the numbers, there are glaring issues. Almost 50% of Billy's meters made are from kick returns or restarts. While Simmonds is slightly less, at 36%, there is still a massive gulf between them and the best 8s in the world. For reference, Ardie Savea and Gregory Aldreit's kick returns make up for less than 10% of their carry meters. Moving on to winning the gain line, and it doesn't get any easier. Simmonds and Vunipola had gain line success rates of 48 and 35% respectively. Comparing that with Savea, who had an 80% success rate in the autumn, it's chalk and cheese. Just focusing on Billy now, and there were grumbles from fans when he received a recall to tour Australia last summer, but his Prem stats absolutely merited this. However, on the international stage, he is not the bulldozer he once was. When Billy is at his best, you notice 2 things. The first is that he's forcing 2 or even 3 players to bring him down, dragging in defenders in order to give his teammates more space. This still happens occasionally, but I'm unsure if this is based on reputation rather than actual threat. The second, and arguably more recognisable attribute, is his offloading game. Against Premiership opposition at Saracens, Billy offloads more than any other player in the league, registering 27 offloads so far this season, at an average of 2.82 per match. However, for England, he offloads at 1.89 per match, with 80% of these coming versus Japan and Argentina. At his best, In the 2019 Rugby World Cup against New Zealand and South Africa, he made 6 offloads across both games, whereas versus the same opposition this autumn, he's only made 1. Billy has been a stalwart of England rugby for the last decade, and he can be extremely proud of a glittering career. If, as expected, this is the end of his time wearing the rose, I hope he goes to France and makes a boatload before he retires. Back to his carry here, however, and it really doesn't leave England with many options. There have been 3 phases, and they've gone backwards on each of them. Therefore, kicking the ball is the only option left. Unlike in general phase play, where momentum and speed can supersede shape, kicking is almost entirely the opposite. Kicking without a cohesive chase is rugby suicide. Everyone has been told at some point in their life that a good chase can turn a poor kick into a decent one. It's the same in reverse, that a good kick can be rubbish if the chase isn't up to scratch. That best explains what happens in this scenario. While Smith launches a great kick into the Twickenham sky, the chasers outside him aren't ready. The lack of communication between Smith and his teammates results in a lopsided chase, which South Africa are about to punish. As I've already mentioned, England are blessed with an abundance of brilliant kick chasers. May, Watson, Stewart, Knoll, Murley, Cokanasiga, the list of back 3 players is endless. Itoje and Chesham, Laws are all mobile for their size and seem to be magnets for our wingers to knock the ball back to. However, the most impressive and vital to the team is Tom Curry. The determination to get to and be involved in absolutely everything is unparalleled. As Curry consistently tops the tackle count, hits rucks, and makes carries, you would understand if he chose to take a minimal role in kick chase. And yet, he's always racing his fellow teammates to make the hit on the receiver. The performances on the Lions tour were most memorable, smashing Quagga Smith resulting in a turnover, or manhandling Andre Pollard into touch. Wherever the kick landed, he was there to form the greeting party. The talent of these players not involved makes it so hard to understand why Smith was kicking with only Stewart and Jamie George onside and outside of him. Waiting for the right players to get set would have resulted in a cohesive chase and almost certainly prevented the try. Taking nothing away from the quality of the South African counter-attack, nor the step from Arendse, but England should not be giving away that kind of opportunity. Hopefully Borthwick and Sinfield can bring a steely discipline back to England for the Six Nations campaign. I hope you enjoyed watching this mini review. Please do subscribe if you did. As I said earlier, I'm going to be doing another video based more on the set piece and defence. Hopefully we'll know a bit more about the changes in systems from Jones's tenure to Borthwick's by then. If you would like me to analyse anything else in the meantime, don't hesitate to leave a comment and I'll see what I can do. Thanks for watching.